Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's Board of Education meeting. Having received confirmation that the video is streaming correctly, Board of Education President, Mr. Robert Ragland, will now call the meeting to order.
Robert, you're on mute.
Muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for attending tonight's virtual meeting of the Southwestern City School District Board of Education, dated Monday, August 10th, 2020. While the agenda will be visible during the meeting for those watching online, you may also want to follow along using the agenda posted on our website at www.swcsd.us under the Board of Education tab. Please remember that public participation will not be interactive during tonight's meeting. And please note that tonight's meeting may not run perfectly, but we are doing the best to keep things running smoothly as we continue down the path of virtual school board meetings. And with that being said, I want to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Caldwell.
Here.
Mr. Donofrio.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Schreiner.
Here.
Mr. Ragland.
Here. Next up, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Schreiner, so moved, Mr. President.
Is there a second?
Second, Donofrio.
Roll.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio. Can't hear you.
Yes. Sorry.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Next up, approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Johnson.
Second, Anthony Caldwell.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. And next up, board reports. Do we have any? We don't. And next, public participation relative to agenda items. Do we have any of those?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. Okay, first up is Julie Liscani. Go ahead, Ms. Liscani.
There we go. I think I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for taking my question. I actually have a couple questions, but I'm sure my time is limited. 5 minutes. I wanted to ask first and foremost about under the remote learning, under the equitable access, and wondering if we have a percentage of students that we know of that do not have Chromebooks or laptops, internet access, and how we are reaching those students and how they're expected to stay at the same pace as their peers if they do not have the tools that they need. Do I go to my next question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. My second question is in terms of professional development. from section 6 of the plan. And I'm wondering if teachers were required to participate in the summer academy to learn how to teach remotely or how to better teach remotely, or were they just allowed to choose not to? I'm trying to understand that. It looks like there were 2 days of development sessions on the 24th and 26th. So I'm trying to understand if teachers have been preparing all summer for remote learning or if they just had a 2-day development session. And my third question is about the $1 million CARE Act money that the district received. And I'm wondering if we can get a breakdown of how this money will be spent throughout the district. Is it strictly for PPE for whenever we get back to the building? Or is this money going to be spent for example, devices, Chromebooks, internet access to those who are underserved?
Okay, well, thank you, ma'am. Those questions are duly noted. And I will have Mr. Stewart and Mr. Garside get back with you with those answers to those questions.
Thank you very much.
And did we have somebody else for public participation? Okay. And that was it for public participation for agenda items. Next up, legislative liaison report, Mr. Lee Schreiner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm hoping you can hear me clearly. I am going to highlight this legislative report since the last report done in July to try to update it for August 10th. The Ohio House of Representatives on July 30th passed a motion to select Representative Robert Cupp from Lima as Speaker of the House by a vote of 55 to 38. This followed the motion to vacate Representative Larry Householder from the office of Speaker by a vote of 91 to 0. The leadership change was spurred by an announcement on July 21st that Householder and 4 others were arrested by federal agents in connection with an alleged $600 million bribery and racketeering investigation. Householder has indicated he will not resign his legislative seat, but the House has a brand new Speaker. You may have heard that name before. The Cupp-Patterson school funding proposal, which is on hold currently. Governor also received controlling board approval to use CARES Act funds for schools. Governor Mike DeWine, through the Department of Education, or ODE, submitted 2 separate requests to the Ohio Controlling Board to use CARES Act coronavirus relief funds for K-12 schools. The first request that was approved on July 13th provided $100 million to be used for COVID-19 related expenses. The dollars will be distributed using a base amount 19 related expenses. The dollars established by fiscal year 2019 enrollment data from the state report card. Additional funds will be distributed to districts for economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, and English learners. Lastly, transportation funds will be allocated based on the proportionate share for each district's calculated transportation funds in 2018 and 19. Second request was for $50 million that would allow both public and private schools to apply for a dollar-to-dollar matching grant program with the state for Wi-Fi hotspots, in-home internet, and internet-enabled devices for students. The controlling board approved the request on July 27th. there will be an update at the end here. National Congress works on next COVID-19 stimulus bill. Members of the U.S. House and Senate have expressed the importance of coming to consensus on the next stimulus bill, and discussions continue between legislative leaders as they try to reach an agreement before their August recess. I'm also attaching, so that you can go and look, recently introduced legislation, which there was a lot of that's proposed in the state of Ohio, and you can take a look at that. Governor activity. Governor Mike DeWine announced that K through 12 students who return to school buildings are required to wear masks. The order includes exceptions. The update for the CARE money, Lieutenant Governor John Husted announced recently a change to the grant program that would allow schools to receive funds for Wi-Fi hotspots, in-home internet, internet-enabled devices for students. Previously, the $50 million from the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund required schools to have matching dollar-to-dollar funds to apply for the grants. The dollar-to-dollar matching funds requirement has since been removed from that application. Respectfully, I submit that report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And next up, Student and Staff Achievement Report, Mr. Anthony Caldwell.
We have no report tonight as it's summer break.
All right. Okay. On the items for action, fiscal and operational management, back to Lee Schreiner.
Thank you. My last time, I promise. Fiscal and operational management. This evening, Mr. President, we have 5 items for action. First, revised temporary appropriations for fiscal year 2020-2021, Exhibit X1. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the revised temporary appropriations. Secondly, investments statements for July 2020, Exhibits X2 and X3. It is recommended that in accordance with Section 135.14 of the Ohio Revised Code, the Board of Education approved July investments, Exhibit X2, and cash position report for the month of July 2020, Exhibit X3 as submitted. Total investments, $380,055,998.52. Interest earnings month to date, $451,376.14. Interest earning year to date is exactly that same amount, $451,376.14. And I would just add at this point that the note that July is the first month of our fiscal year. Therefore, the year to date and month to date interest earnings are the same number because we are reporting the first month of that activity. Third, payment of bills, Exhibit X4. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve payment of bills according to the list of checks for the month of July 2020. Fourth, donations, Exhibit X5. Our total donations this month, $100, and we thank, as always, those that are kind enough to contribute. And fifth, authorization to pay bills in accordance with Section 5705.41 Ohio Revised Code, Exhibit X6. It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize the Treasurer to pay bills for July, which were not processed in accordance with Section 5705.41 Ohio Revised Code. Mr. President, after reviewing these items, I move them for passage.
Okay, do we have
Second by Anthony Caldwell.
Mr. Schreiner,
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Next up, curriculum, Mr. Anthony Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Under items for action under curriculum tonight, we have 2 agenda items. The first agenda item is the approval of our restart plan. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the Responsible Restart Southwestern Plan to include the delivery of instruction in a 100% remote, blended, and face-to-face learning models consistent with the attached exhibits, and authorizes the superintendent to transition between delivery models and extracurricular phases using a variety of factors, including but not limited to the information provided by public health agencies, the Ohio Department of Education, the Ohio High School Athletic Association, local data, student absenteeism, staff absenteeism, daily hygiene practices of students, and social distancing behaviors. Second item for action under curriculum tonight is our remote learning plan for our virtual learning academy. It is recommended that the Southwestern City School District Board of Education approve the remote learning plan as presented in the attached exhibit. Having reviewed both of these items, I move them for passage.
We have a second.
I'll second Kathy Johnson.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio,
Sorry, do we have any discussion?
Is
Sure.
there-
Thank you. A lot of parents that have approached me, obviously there are a lot of just concerns and a lot of strong feelings on this topic. And the main one that I'm hearing from a lot of parents, and it was echoed by one of our public comment today, so I wanted to give our administration a chance to respond to that, was about how virtual learning 2.0 will work, and in particular, how that will be different than virtual learning that was in the spring. And so I know that that's a large question, but if we could just speak to particularly what training and extra effort has occurred to ensure that the fall will go more smoothly.
Let's draw a distinction here in the question. There's some redundancy or overlap in the vocabulary. So let me try to clear that up. The state calls our virtual learning academy remote learning. And for our community that has would like to see the face-to-face, for those folks who are in that temporary model of 100% remote, that's what we're calling remote 2.0. So let's draw that clarification. Mr. Stewart has really been leading the efforts as far as remote 2.0. And is probably in the best position to answer that question as directly as possible. If you are available, Mr. Stewart, to do that.
Sure. Mr. Donofrio, you were breaking up a little bit, but I think I heard basically two questions. One was, how will remote 2.0 be different than remote 1.0? And then a question about training. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me start with the differences between remote 1.0 and remote 2.0. And there are a lot I can't get into. Obviously, there isn't enough time to get into all of it. But I would say in every corner and facet of our organization, we learned a great deal in the spring. We are applying that to what we do here in the fall. What I would say to you is that we basically have teachers working in about 4 different buckets as we head into remote 2.0. We are asking teachers to have live opportunities for students to interact with them in live face-to-face interaction every day. We are also asking for students to be able to access pre-recorded lessons from the teacher every week. Additionally, we are still asking, as we did in the spring, for teachers to provide independent work to students that would be an extension of what happens both in that live and the pre-recorded instruction. And we are also asking teachers to set aside a certain amount of time each week where parents can access the teacher directly for interaction and questions and assistance in supporting their child. Additionally, we're asking all teachers to utilize Google Classroom as their primary learning management system. And within that, that Google Classroom for every teacher, we're asking for a standardized set of information to be posted there every day or every week, so that any parent that has any questions will at least know that there is one spot where they can go for every teacher and at least find out a certain minimal piece of information. So that's those are the primary differences. Like I said, there's lots more in terms of different specific areas of the organization, but in general, just the balance of that live interaction. What we heard from parents was that my child needs to see and hear from their teacher more and more regularly, and our teachers have been fantastic in stepping up to support that feedback. But what we also have heard from our families is that some of the families really are set up and desire a more predictable, regular, live interaction with their teacher. Yet other families have continued to say to us, because of our family situation, my child won't be able to access the instruction on a certain scheduled time during the normal school day. And so that's why you see that blend of both live interaction as well as pre-recorded instruction to try to support both of those types of families. Transitioning to training, we have offered training throughout the summer in this area. Our most recent Professional Development Academy, I would tell you, at just the elementary level, we had over 1,000 different teachers access that training over the summer, and then in those 3 days prior to school starting, the 24th, 25th, and 26th, our curriculum department will be offering essentially 3 full days of training mixed in with those teacher work days to assist teachers with any new tools that we've provided this year, as well as just some of the things that you talked about in terms of just how to teach in a remote environment.
Is there any further discussion?
Just to follow up on that, based off of the question was asked at the beginning, because I know we've shared it here many times, but just for those watching, can you explain the devices that we have available for our students who may not have computers at home, and how they're going to be able to access this information?
Sure. Yes, and thanks for bringing that up. I probably should have included that in the differences between 1.0 and 2.0. In the spring, we were from a device standpoint, what we were able to provide was essentially one device per household. And again, the feedback we got from our community was that in many situations that simply was not enough. And so our Board of Education made that commitment over the summer to go to a pure 1-to-1 ratio in terms of devices. So one of the other major differences between 1.0 and 2.0 will be that any student who requests a device will be provided that device by the district. And we still will also be able to provide a limited number of hotspot internet access for students who do not have internet access, as we did in the spring.
Right, and all of those have internet security to make sure that they're only accessing what they should be accessing, which I really appreciate our IT department doing that. Thank you.
Yes, they all, both the old and the newer devices will have that functionality, as well as a parent communication piece that allows parents to have some information on that as well.
And Mr. President, just one last question. Transition, how will parents and or staff know when we transition from one virtual versus blended model, and what kind of lead time will they have to plan things like childcare and transportation?
Great question, Mr. Caldwell. As we transition, we don't anticipate a prolonged period of time in order to make transitions. It will take us a couple of days to make sure that we are able to get that word out. But in general, once the data shows that we're prepared to make a transition, we think the following week we should be able to make that transition and be able to communicate it through a variety of methods in order to get it there.
Thank you. And Mr. President, one last question. How about IEP needs? How will IEP needs be met for those students who will be learning remotely?
So a variety of support services follow the students, regardless of whether they're in our virtual learning academy or if they're in the remote. The IEPs and the way the IEP is written determines the services. And just like if they were face-to-face, we'll extend those services to the best of our ability and meet the individual needs of those students. So regular IEP meetings that take place, consultation with the intervention specialists, and those supports continue to follow children, and we'll continue to support them in that way. We do anticipate that there will be periods of time where an individual or individuals, even when we're in remote, will come into the school building and meet with individual specialists to receive specific services and or meet with individual staff members as well.
Any other questions? Well, we can continue to work.
I have a yes from Mr. Caldwell and Ms. Johnson. Mr. Donofrio. Is he frozen? Mr. Donofrio?
It looks like he's froze.
Uh-oh. Gonna need some tuck help on that one.
That's right. Did you see that, David's frozen?
I will reach out to him via.
Yes.
Got it.
There we go. Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes.
And Mr. President, before you go on, if I could just add now that we voted, there is a site, correct, that we could mention again for questions and facts that are out there for folks to be able to go to and find out answers to a lot of questions.
Can you hear me?
And that would be our back to school website and also under FAQs, frequently asked questions.
Thank you.
And Mr. Garside, did we get David's vote and Vice President Johnson?
Yes, we did get David's vote, Mr. Donofrio's vote, and I just reached out to him via text to see what's going on with him. I heard him talk a couple times.
Give it another couple seconds and
Yeah, his section's next, so.
yeah.
I would make the suggestion that he closes out and comes back in,
Can you
maybe.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's him talking, isn't it?
Not very good.
No. If he rejoins us.
There he goes. He's gonna probably try to come back in.
Yeah.
Is this why you read that thing at the beginning, Robert, that everything might
That's
not?
right. That's right.
Mhm.
Let's say planning is man's attempt to influence a changing society. Yeah. I had a college professor tell me that 30 odd years ago. Didn't know what he meant. Because David's next on the.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
I am so sorry.
Good.
Okay, are you ready for my session?
Well, next up, facilities and development, David Donofrio.
Thank you, and again, my apologies. Good evening, President Ragland and members of the board. Tonight, for facilities development, we have 3 items for consideration. First, to authorize and approve the acceleration of floor coverings from phase 3 to phase 2 renovations at East Franklin Elementary School in the amount of $151,201.33. Second, to enter into the amendment with Company LLC of Ohio for the early site preparation work in the amount of $2,336,157 for Pleasant View Middle School, at $2,309,821 for North Middle School. And finally, to end the amendment with Utility Company Incorporated of Ohio for the early stage preparation work in the amount of $1,126,228 for Brook Park Middle School, and $2,830,601 for Finland Middle School. Having reviewed these items, I recommend their passage and move to do so at this time.
Do we have a second?
Second, Shriner.
Roll.
Mr. Donofrio.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
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 Mr. Shriner.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. And next up, we need to go to executive session. It is recommended that the Board of Education adjourn to executive session according to policy 0166 to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Anthony Caldwell.
Second, Kathy Johnson.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio. Mr. Donofrio.
Got him on the phone.
Yes.
Mr. Shriner.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Okay, well, that's all for now, folks. We're headed to executive session, and then we will be back.
Yeah, Mr. Ragland, so the audience understands what happens. We will actually be leaving this meeting room and headed to a virtual executive session. We will return because we do anticipate further action items yet taking place this evening. So we will disappear and then you'll see us come back for those folks who are in the viewing audience.
So we'll be back in a few.
Mr. President, I have a suggestion when I'm able to talk.
I was gonna say, do we need to log out of anything?
No.
Yeah, okay.
He's getting everybody else in
Do we need to join the session?
there. Yes, tell him yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I gotta join mine too. Yep, I'm unmuted. Looks like everybody else is.
He needs to be unmuted. Hey, Lee, can you maybe hit unmute? I think,
Yeah.
oh, you just muted yourself again. I think maybe Rob will do it for you. There you go. You're good. All right, I'm gonna do roll call. Mr. Caldwell,
Yes, they're here.
Mr. Donofrio, Ms. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Shriner,
Here.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Okay, we're back. Next up, personnel actions, Vice President Kathy Johnson.
Thank you, President Ragland. On the board agenda this evening are 6 personnel items involving 385 persons. These include 1 certificate resignation, 274 certificated employments, 4 classified resignations, 8 classified changes in employment status, 98 classified employments, and a recommendation to approve the 1-year extension of the collective bargaining agreement between the Ohio Association of Public School Employees, Local 211, and the Southwestern City School District Board of Education, effective July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Having reviewed these items, I move them for passage.
Second, Anthony Caldwell.
Roll call.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio,
Yes.
Mr. Shriner,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
And yes, with the abstention from item L due to conflict of interest. Okay. And next up, we have no public participation relative to non-agenda items. And then finally, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second, Anthony Caldwell.
There we go. Roll call.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio,
Yes.
Shriner,
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Okay. Well, once again, thank you all very much. Stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and social distancing.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.